Battlefield 1 is a video game based on the events that occurred during the First World War. Today we're going to dig in the history of what we see in the trailer of Battlefield 1. This history is the kind with explosions, mustard gas, and clubs made of nails, and that's exactly where we're starting. Here we see a British soldier being battered with a trench club, which is quickly becoming the post weapon for Battlefield 1. These were primitive clubs made from whatever stuff people could get their hands on, and I really do mean primitive. They were often made from spades or bits of wood, made morely though by the addition of steel cable, hobnails, and even empty grenade casings attached to the end. Some trench clubs even used coil springs to create an effective boingy version of the medieval Morning Star. We see some other interesting stuff here, including a good look of No Man's Land and some hints of the chemical warfare stuff we'll see later on. There's also a nice bit here that references the modern-day myth of T. Lawrence, better known as Lawrence of Arabia. Moving on, we got a shot of a two-seater biplane, and you can see a roundel on the wing, identifying it as a British plane. It's not a RAF aircraft, though. The Royal Air Force wasn't created until 1918, formed by joining the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service. But why use a roundel instead of a flag? Well, at first, the Union flag was painted on the wings and sides of the aircraft. At a distance, it was too easily confused with the Iron Cross used on German planes to avoid friendly fire. British aircraft uses a revised version of the French tricolor cockade. Instead, basically, if it's round, red, and blue, don't shoot at it, unless, of course, you're fighting for the Central Powers, in which case do. Fast forward a bit, and our next stop is helmet. Yes, I said helmet. The German soldier in the shot is wearing a Stahlhelm, which literally means helmet. It's based on the Pickelhaube, the iconic spiked German helmet typically associated with the Prussian army, made famous by Otto von Bismarck. Amazingly, all German helmets before World War I were leather Pickelhaubes. However, as Germany's stockpiles diminished during the war, demand led to other materials being used, such as sheet steel, pressurized felt, and even paper. This design offered almost no protection against shell fragments, and shrapnel made the wearer a conspicuous and cool-looking target. Despite this, the Pickelhaube was produced up until 1915, complete with a pointless detachable spike. I suppose you could always use a spike on your trench club. We get a quick look here at someone who's likely to be based on the Red Baron, real name Manfred von Richthofen. The Red Baron was officially credited with 80 air combat victories. He peaks during the Bloody April of 1917, during which he downed 22 British aircraft, including 4 in a single day. Despite his successes, though, he remained a captain. His father was a reserve major, and it was only customary for a son never to hold a higher rank than his father. Here, we see a British Mark model tank, which came in multiple iterations during the war. Heavy tanks were designated male or female, depending on the type of armament they carried on the pods on the sides called sponsons. Some Mark V tanks were converted to hermaphrodites by fitting one male and one female sponson to either side, so every vehicle had access to a 6-pound gun. For a bit further, in the weapon in the foreground, here is a Lewis machine gun. It's an automated rifle usually associated with British forces, but it was actually invented by a U.S. Army colonel called Isaac Newton Lewis in 1911. It wasn't actually initially adopted by the U.S. Army. However, Lewis argued with the U.S. Ordnance Department and ended up moving to Belgium and then to Britain. This led to mass production of the Lewis machine gun in the U.K., which was used in various iterations up until the end of the Korean War in 1953. The U.S. Army finally decided to use them after British and French forces bought more than 100,000 weapons. The yellow stuff you can see here is mustard gas. It's not in fact derived from a delicious condiment, but a chemical warfare agent which forms large blisters on exposed skin and, if inhaled, the lungs. You can see why he equips a gas mask, but that would only prevent respiratory damage. Mustard gas is only lethal in about 1% of cases. Its effectiveness was as an incapacitating agent and also as an area denial weapon. So, why mustard? Well, sulfur mustards are colorless liquids at room temperature when used in pure forms, as they are in chemical warfare agents. They are often yellow, brown in color, and smell a little bit like mustard plants. This kind of weapon was prohibited under the Geneva Protocol of 1925 and the Chemical Weapons Convention of 1993. So, if you could smell mustard now, it probably means you're just making a sandwich, my guy. The short here, a full-body armor, might feel slightly fantastical, but it's actually based on fact. German trench attack squads wore plated lobster armor useful for protecting against pistol rounds and edged weapons, but less capable under direct fire. The big problem was weight. The armor was often so heavy it was only useful for troops on sentry duty and static machine gunners. This almost changed thanks to the work of Bashford Dean, an American zoologist and expert in medieval and modern armor. Dean designed a battle harness with vulcanized sponge rubber padding, offering complete torso protection, Poldren's Cooter's Van braces, and a helmet weighing in at a neat 14 pounds. It could stop pistol rounds and rifle balls and could have cut deaths by 1/3 or more, but Dean's armor went nowhere. Allied commanders were worried soldiers would just take it off, but the bigger problem was mindset. The general staff believed society was willing to sacrifice young men for the good of the nation, so why bother to protect them? Finally, we've got a Central Power soldier using a flamethrower. These were the first used in World War I in 1915, but most casualties were caused by flushing soldiers out into the open, where they were killed by more conventional means. Flamethrowers had other limitations too. They required at least a 2-man team to operate, one to fire and another one to carry fuel and propellant tanks. It could only be safely fired from a trench. The fuel also only lasted for around 2 minutes. So yeah, that was a general coverage of the history shown in the Battlefield 1 trailer, and speaking of the trailer, I will now show it for you so you can enjoy the intense history of the Great World War.